To share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today's guest is Mary Wilkens from Insite Properties. She's the Chief Operating Officer, and tons of great information about the commercial real estate market. If you are looking into commercial real estate, if you are in the industry, if you are a vendor for the industry, I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this conversation. So grab a cup of coffee and get ready for this conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
All right, Mary, let's jump into it. Rapid fire.
Okay.
5 randomly selected questions just to get under your skin with unknown point values.
Excellent.
You ready?
I'm ready. I'm on.
Number 1, if you had 25 hours in a day, how would you use your extra time?
It would be work. I mean, I know that's sad,
Yeah.
but I know that that's really what it would end up doing. Because I find that I get enough sleep.
Yeah.
I do. So I allocate enough time for that. So it probably would end up being work, which is super sad. Super, super sad.
That's not something to be ashamed of. I mean, I don't know. All right, number 2, if you could commit any crime and get away with it, what would you choose and why?
So I think I could commit a crime and get away with it. I listen to a lot of murder podcasts, and
Okay.
I think I could
You've
do
got
it.
the
I think I
formula.
could do it. And I probably would go full on. I probably would. That's probably it. Probably would be murder, and I probably would get away with it. That's just a little safety
Just
point
don't
I
mess
put
with
out
me.
there.
I just want to make sure that anybody's paying attention.
just in case.
Oh,
So why
that's-
I don't have anybody targeted. Don't
Yeah,
I mean
okay.
but I'm thinking if I did.
You could come up with a list fast.
And I have
Oh.
I have daughters, so I always think it's a good idea to put that out there, straight out there.
Oh, that's great. I've been studying and I've learned from everybody else's mistakes.
I have.
Yeah.
I mean, because you go, what an idiot. That was stupid. So whatever. I think I'm good.
Okay, all right. Well, that's comforting. How would you spend $1 million?
So I would definitely buy a beach house.
Okay.
Yeah. I know you're supposed to say charity and all that.
No.
I would open it up for some people to come and stay there.
Bury the bodies in the back.
That's it. There you go. There you go. Just a little. Like I don't need $1 million for that. Just something little. And
Okay.
but that's what I would
What
do.
about $1 billion?
Oh yeah, so I would then start a foundation.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely start a foundation. It'd probably have to
After
do with
the beach
pets.
house, then the
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't want a big house. I just a little house because I really don't want like a ton of people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have like a small house and maybe a house in on the yard that's not right there with me. Then
There you
they're
go.
not right in my house. So maybe do that. But I would definitely start a foundation probably for animals.
Okay. How
With
many
$1 billion.
How many cats do you have?
I have 2.
Really?
I have 2 cats. Mm-hmm. I have 2 cats.
Very cool. Okay.
I also have a dog.
What kind of dog? Oh,
It's a lab.
You don't seem excited about the dog.
I love that dog.
Oh, okay.
That dog.
A lab.
She is
What
awesome.
color?
Yellow.
Yellow lab. We had a chocolate lab for a long period of time.
They're awesome.
Great dogs.
Awesome dogs.
Yeah.
Awesome dogs. Cats, love them. They're not awesome usually.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We won't get on the cat subject because that could go off the rails. Let's see here. Number 4. If you could be any supernatural creature, what would you be?
Supernatural creature. I don't know, but I would want to fly and sing.
Okay.
A flying singing.
A flying
something.
singing person.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think that would be fun.
Fly around and sing.
And sing.
Yeah, at the beach.
Sing well. Sing well. I can sing, just nobody wants to hear it.
All right. Last one. If you could delete all but 3 apps on your smartphone, which 3 would you keep?
Photos.
Oh, okay.
I would definitely keep my photos. I would keep. I would probably keep the thing to unlock my door. I mean, honestly,
yeah.
because I don't have a key to do it myself. I could probably take care of that today. But, and the other is I would probably have to keep my directory, so that I could get people's numbers and stuff because I don't know any of those. So I probably have to keep
your
those
contact
contacts.
list?
That's what it's
Okay.
called.
And then your app to use to get in your buildings, and then your photos.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's it. And the app also gets in my house, which
Wow.
is even
Yeah.
more important than the buildings. Because I could knock and somebody at home, nobody would let me.
Hello.
Please open the door.
All right. Well, congratulations. You made it through.
Thank
5
you.
questions.
Excellent.
We'll give you a score of 912.
Excellent.
Yes.
Out of 1,062,000,
I mean,
something like that.
there's really
great.
there's no scoring metrics whatsoever. It's completely made up on the spot, but fantastic
I like
job.
it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Mary, you're the Chief Operating Officer of Insite Properties.
I am.
You've been around the property management world and have had a lot of experience with commercial real estate. This is something that I have wanted to have a good conversation with somebody about commercial real estate for a long time. Selfishly, for a little bit of perspective, it's a lot of the customer base that we deal with is commercial real estate, property managers, brokers, building owners, all that. I don't want to. We're going to have to talk about COVID, right? We're going to
Right.
have to talk about the pandemic. I don't want to harp on it too much, but
Yeah.
it has revolutionized, probably changed a lot of your industry. So I want to be a little. I want to just kind of give us a snapshot of the last 24 months. So if we were to go back in time to say May of 2019,
Right.
to where we sit today. What is the, and maybe it's going to be a hard question to answer, what is the biggest thing that has changed in the past 24 months in your world?
So I think it's certainly COVID, right? Is obviously the biggest thing, and how multiple impacts on how we deliver service in a lot of ways to tenants that aren't physically present.
Okay.
Right. So trying to navigate that, but also, I think we're seeing now more activity on the office side, and in the things I hear, sessions I attend, and all of that kind of stuff. We're seeing more shifts there starting again.
Yeah.
So we obviously during the last 13, 14 months, there was limited activity.
Yeah.
We still saw some activity with some of the new product we had and things that were underway, but other things kind of plateaued a bit, and so I think we're starting to see some of that.
So office occupancy just dried up. I mean, there was a lot of just vacant space or very, 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 very limited space.
So before the pandemic, I mean, we were getting ready to build another. We completed a 100,000 square foot plus tower, not tower, but building.
Yep.
And we had plans to do another 250,000 square foot building. COVID stopped that, right? Because
Okay.
that was all going to be spec. We didn't have anybody sign leases for that yet. So pre-pandemic, we didn't have any real qualms about that, and our investors didn't necessarily have any qualms about doing it a spec building. The prior building that we had done, the refinery, we did spec. And, money costs a little bit more because banks, even back then, were a little hesitant to give you money
Sure.
if you had no way of paying it back for sure. But investors felt good about things. So, I think that things were really hot in the office market.
Yep.
And certainly COVID has shifted that because it kind of stopped everything. But things are starting back. And I would say, everything didn't shut down. What we've seen, so, we were in an interesting position. We had a building that was about 50% occupied when COVID hit. So
Okay.
we had about 50,000 square feet, a little less than that,
All right.
to lease up. And we were able to lease that during the pandemic and build out the space.
Wow.
So, from an operating standpoint, it was easier because you had less people in the building.
Sure.
Noise wasn't as much of an issue as you're going through build outs and that kind of stuff. But what we had one particular, one tenant that was building out. They had signed their lease, pandemic hit, they were in design, and they said, wait,
Yeah.
maybe we don't need all this space, right? It wasn't a huge space. It was, 8,000 feet, something like that. Maybe we don't need all that. Maybe we can do it 5. They did some iterations, and then they came back and said, no, you know what? We're probably going to need to take actually an extra 350 feet because now that we're looking at this, we're just going to spread people out more. We're going to have less people in the space. We still need all the space because we're not going to put people
Yeah.
4 feet apart from one another on these long tables. Now we're going to go ahead and build some 6-foot workstations, and we're going to do some of that. So we were able to see that.
Yeah.
And we're able to fill the building during that kind of downtime, which was good. I think, what I see and intuition tells you and what you hear is we're going to have some of the larger users, like the big users of space, are going to be given some space back because they have a lot of space and they're sending a lot of people home.
So is it going to be kind of... It's going to be kind of a shift, right? So you've got those businesses that are, when you say larger, that are occupying 20, 30, 40, 50,000 square foot of space, and they say, hey, you know what? We're going to give up 15,000. But in the flip of that, are you seeing those tenants that are in the 5, 10, 15,000 that are saying, hey, we actually want to pick up 5,000 of that?
We've got a lot of people that want to expand.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of people that really want to expand. And so that's good. I think that, the Bank of Americas that have,
Sure.
they're going to have some scale.
Yeah.
That you're going to see some leases non-renewing. I don't think they're going to walk away from anything.
Yeah.
I still think they're good credit.
Yeah.
But I think when their leases come up, they're probably going to look at how do we scale back some of the space that's third party that we're leasing, and that gives some opportunity for others. I think that people want to get back into their office at least at some level, and I think that businesses, we've all learned that we can work remote.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've also learned that the downsides of working remote, and I think you have a lot of people that don't want to do it on a permanent everyday basis. I think you have a few people that do, but I think you're going to have people coming back.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property.
The little bit that I've been around the industry, I have seen kind of this ebb and flow, this kind of roller coaster where, even go back, 6-7 years ago, we're sending a lot of people remote.
Right.
And then after 24 months or something, everyone's
Maybe not. Maybe that wasn't such a great idea.
And then so you kind of see the pull, and over the last say 14 months, I think the entire country got a real big experiment of what it means to work remote and what positions can do that, what positions can't, what companies and what cultures will allow it, what won't.
Correct. I mean, I think it was a huge, learning curve for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think things will be forever different, but I don't think they're going to be so dramatically different. I think the other thing you're going to also see in markets like Charlotte is you're going to have people who are moving from some of the much larger markets into these smaller markets, still working for, the same companies that they may have worked for before. And so I think you may end up with some small satellite type space that companies. However, there's a whole lot of different ways to make those things happen. But I think you're going to see people relocate. I mean, I know people in Manhattan, right, that are like, you know what, I'm not going to do. I'm just not. Like I would rather move somewhere else. I can keep my job. So that's awesome. But they probably will need some form of space at some point to some level. So I think as it always does, I think things will change. But I just don't think we're gonna see like this is such a huge shift forever. I think it's going to be a shift and has been a shift, but I think it's going to be just we're shifting the way we do things. But I don't think you're going to have. I don't think you're going to have these huge changes in how office space gets used.
So you're not necessarily expecting these mass vacancies and mass exodus of of commercial real estate where you're just going to have these huge buildings that are just.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that, I think retail is still going to be tough. It was tough before, right?
Retail's been being chopped away at for many years
has.
with online. There are certain aspects that people need to come in or want to come in, but for a lot of it,
it's not. And so that's just a continuation of that. And so, I think that there were some boosts actually during COVID because people couldn't get things. At least initially. So, I don't think you're going to see a huge change from the direction that retail was going. But I think from the office perspective, you are going to have some blocks of space that come available. And so you're going to have some relet space that, that comes. And I think that's going to be, my take would be you're going to see that more in the downtown market. You're going to see where some of the largest users of space, so the banks, and are going to non-renew some leases. But I don't think that they're going to vacate their buildings. I don't think you're going to have a mass exodus. I think you're going to just see some shifts as leases start to roll, that you'll have some space that has to be backfilled.
So typically speaking, and I'm just trying to, I don't know that there's a scientific answer here, but a lot, from my understanding, please correct me if I'm off base here, a lot of those large users are also on very long-term deals.
Correct.
Okay, so some of them may be coming in renewal in these periods just because that's natural.
How. Yep.
But they could have just signed a 10 or 15-year lease.
Correct. So and a lot of those users do, they look at their books and they do it by roll, right? So they don't have that all of the space all comes up at the same time. Sure. So yes, I mean, that's why I just don't think you're going to have these huge, I think you're going to have space that comes back without a doubt. But I just don't think it's going to be this huge. I think once we can get people back downtown, I think that it's going to be helpful when the banks really start. And I hear different things, I hear May, I hear June, I hear August, is when they're really bringing people back in, because we need some life back downtown. Sure. Yeah. And so I think that'll make everybody feel better too.
It was interesting for us around, it was really around January, we started getting a lot of customer demand increase for, hey, we need to get in and rekey this facility because we're starting to bring people back
in.
But it was in small spurts, and I'm trying to remember the facilities. It wasn't. I'm pretty confident it wasn't uptown, but there was some of that resurgence back at the beginning of the year, and I think to your point, sometime through this summer or whatever, that's probably we'll start to see that again. So here's my other question for you. You mentioned that you guys halted a project on a new construction.
Right.
I know this podcast goes out across the country, right? So there's everybody's going to see this in different spurts.
Right.
In our area of Charlotte, there's been construction going nonstop. They never took a day off.
Right. Correct.
Especially if you go up and down South Boulevard, which is a highly what would it be? It's a popular area, but
I mean, it's a very growing market. I mean, that's you've got a lot of growth on multifamily, and office has really opened up that sector. So
multifamily has
crazy.
They're putting
where are all those people coming from?
Well, there's these massive stretches, right? And I think that proves to your point where there's an exodus out of larger markets, and Charlotte is a banking capital. There's going to be some shifts and adjustments, and people are going to be coming here. But across the board, I mean, multifamily
has
housing
never slowed down.
Oh,
I mean,
my
it's
gosh.
been crazy for many years. I mean, you see a lot of that. You see just a continued ton of multifamily. And I think, so when you say, like, through the pandemic, everything you've seen, the cranes still, things are still building. So anything that was under construction, they were going to finish,
so
right? Anything that hasn't started, I think is where you're going to see a lag.
So we'll see a lag for a little bit of time.
18 months maybe,
okay.
Right?
From you think from the start of the pandemic?
Yeah, and so I think that you'll start, I mean, I think you're already starting to see some things start. So, I mean, we would love to get our deal back on the table, right? And something that's being looked at is how do we do that? the investors are going to still be leery for a little while, just
Yeah.
and banks of how they're going to lend. So we'll see some shifts in the development side, and so that may take a little longer for things to get back. Also, because chunks of space will be coming available.
Yeah. So now people are going to start
so
looking.
So it's
yeah.
maybe we could just sublet something downtown. We're going to have that space is going to be available, and that's. That happens in the cycle of real estate anyway and growth. This was just a bigger cycle of that. So, I try. Some people would disagree with this statement, but I try to be really optimistic and happy because why? Like, what's the point? You got a plan, but I really feel like I've been doing this for a really long time in this market, right, for 35 years. And I've seen a lot of, now, I've never seen a pandemic like this, right? But I've seen a lot of these cycles. And so I think it's interesting. I just don't think it's going to be the end of any particular thing.
I wasn't as involved in some of these things back in 2001. Obviously, I wasn't even in the industry at that point when there was massive economic downturn.
Right.
Then there was 2008, 2009. That was I was just kind of getting involved at that point and kind of not really understanding everything that was happening there. So I guess my question for that is, you've watched those different things happen. How similar are you seeing things on your forefront that are either replicating that or vast differences from those time periods?
So I would say in those time periods, the majority of my career has been spent on the operations side.
Sure.
So that can delve into the development side and other things, but more focused on operations. So during a downturn, like any of those that you mentioned, operations typically it gets impacted on a very minor scale. From the standpoint of you may have some small owners that decide to self-manage. Otherwise, things pretty much stay the same. You just have a tighter budget.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out how to do things less expensively and all those things. So from an operational standpoint, you don't see these huge, it's a more level playing field, just as COVID was. It just was different. We still had to maintain everything. We still had to keep everything operating. We had to keep, even buildings that were locked down had to be inspected every other day. Things leak, things happen. You have to be in them. And you still had to provide janitorial. If you had a multi-tenant building, you still had to provide janitorial because you've got some people that were coming in. So, a lot of that, while some things shifted, things continued on. So I think that from my perspective, I see it was a different reason. All the pieces of it were different than they have been in the past, but they still remain constant, which can lead me to I feel like things will that we're on the same track. You saw with the other downturns, you saw the same kind of contraction of space and those kind of things, and you've seen that it's built up and boomed and gone from there. We had times when multifamily was way down, and I would never have thought we would have gotten to where we are today because it's 300 new units every time I turn around and I'm like, geez Louise, where is all that coming from? So I don't know. It's interesting.
There's a several mile stretch in this area that's, and again, I refer to it as South Boulevard, and a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about when I say that, but that used to be all industrial buildings.
Correct.
And it is now thousands of units.
Thousands and thousands and more. Yeah. And they just keep building them. Like, I didn't even know that land was there. Where'd they get that land from?
Knocking down industrial buildings and putting them up nonstop. So you see, it's you haven't seen a massive disruption outside of some new development getting started, but kind of what I'm hearing you say is that 18 to 24 month pause kind of lag, that when that kind of kicks back up, then and we're kind of getting close to that.
Right. I think you're going to see it. Again, I think you're going to have some, so when we started the refinery on a spec basis, that was unusual, right? Because typically with lenders, you do need to have, a certain percent of the building pre-leased before you break ground. And so that's atypical. So going into the new development we were going to do kind of on that same basis was unlike, even at that time, with as good as things were, was unlikely to continue to be a regular occurrence. We had a good investor base.
Sure.
So getting back to that's going to be tough because you're going to have investors and lenders that do remain worried until there's a projection of when all these big leases start rolling and what different periods of time and when things are coming on. So when you're looking at a development and you're going to deliver in 24 months from when you start, they're going to be looking at who's going to be in the market then to take these large chunks of space and how much large space is going to be available that's an option for them. Because pre-pandemic, you weren't looking at if you had a 40,000 square foot user come in, there's nowhere for them to go. You're going to have to build them new space, and it takes a long time, right? So now there may be 40,000 chunks of space that could come available. So I think really you're going to have investors and bankers that are really looking at those numbers. So some of your new development could lag a little. Also, if multifamily takes every piece of space that there is, then it's going to be hard to put a building up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll start converting multifamily into office or something. I don't know.
We understand the frustrations HOA board members and property managers face when deciding the best solution for their HOA and pool security. Should we use a keypad, hand out keys, or install a key card system? Do we even need cameras? These are some of the questions that are difficult to navigate, and we're here to help. At Loc-Doc Security, we've spent over 20 years working with homeowners associations and property managers to find the system that best fits the pool and HOA needs. Camera systems for the front gate or front entrance, key card systems for the pool gates, or simply updating the gate so that it meets safety and code compliance. We like to take the guesswork out of the process to answer any questions and help find the right solution. Our mission is to help you protect your people and your property, and that includes pools. Contact our team today to schedule your free consultation for your community.
What I'm hearing you say is that commercial real estate historically and even now has not been a reactionary industry. It's been very strategic because it's long-term leases, it's long-term builds. You kind of know when things are happening far into the future versus just everything shuts down. Yeah, I mean, you can have cataclysmic things that impact it, but they impact it shorter term, right? I mean, it's not all magic to make everything happen. So I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. So the other two things, and maybe there's more than that, but just the two things that I can think of at the moment that I've seen and I've been interested in talking to someone about is, one, property changing hands during this pandemic. Right. There was a lot. I mean, we can talk about the housing market, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about commercial real estate. It was a lot of real estate changing hands. No, that's number one. And then number two, I can't remember. So let's talk about number one. Number one. Property changing hands. So, I think that you had some definite marketing of properties that was already starting going into the pandemic. So I think that, what we saw was kind of a scale back and wait before we sell a lot of things. So, I mean, we did successfully make sales during the pandemic and purchases. But we also held back on some larger sales and some other things. So, I think, again, it gets to who's buying and where does their money come from. Because if you can't get the dollar value, there was a piece of time in there during the pandemic where things were really questionable, right? I mean, like everybody was like, we don't know when we're going back to work, if ever, and all those kind of things. So I think that was a short period of time. I think you're talking about, 4 or 5 weeks where it was like everybody was kind of like, we've never seen this before and we don't know what to do. And then people figured out what to do. Yeah. But so I think there were periods of time where you might not get top dollar because it might look like you're trying to offload property. I think the other thing is how
fortunate a property has been where tenants have continued to pay their rent. Because if you have a property where tenants have, with PPP, didn't pay, or just didn't pay, it depends on the makeup of the property, that could significantly impact what somebody's willing to pay for the property. So if you're on an uptick and you have this hit and you have 3 tenants that quit paying rent or for whatever period of time, that can impact the sale price of the property. So you had some owners that would say, we're going to wait, let's get through to the other side of this. The other thing that's interesting with commercial real estate is, it also is lease term, is how much term is left on your lease. Mm-hmm. And so it usually is pretty specific of when properties will get marketed, because you want to do it when you have these longer hold, long-term leases and how they roll and all of that. Sure. And so you put a pandemic right in the middle of that and you lose 6 months of marketing, then you may not be in the best position. So you may again wait another 24 months before you market it, because you want to re-up some of your tenants.
Got it.
Its value is based on,
on your leases.
On the lease term, and it's based on a lot of things, but that certainly plays into it. So where you may have been ready to market last May, because you had just signed all these leases and this was going to be great. Well, then the pandemic hit and you needed to wait because things were unknown. You only needed to wait 3 months, but then by 3 months, then you're like, nah, now we've got, we're going to have more roll on this one or whatever. So
in the and this is maybe just an ignorant question, but that's the ones I like to ask. Is there intentional and decisions about diversification of tenants, meaning, because kind of just what you said, a economic downturn, if you've got all, pizza restaurants in one park and pizza is disrupted, then now you have a complete disruption. Is that something that has always been, or is that something that's been re-energized?
So I think it's definitely a piece of, it's what that mix is, what the tenant mix is. And it can be anything from, is it all marketing companies? Is it all, is it whatever? Is it all, is what, and I think the pandemic will bring more light to that, because when we get 24 more months into this and say, now we're going to really look at who was impacted the most, who quit paying rent, who moved out, who downsized. We're going to have all that data, and we're going to know which type firms those was. Was it law firms? Was it, who was it that did this? Because you do want to position your property. If you're going to continue to operate it, or if you're going to sell it, you want to position it to where you limit as much risk as you possibly can. And so, they do that in retail. You want to have you don't want to have all nail salons, right? You don't want to have all pizza restaurants.
We do that in our business as well. I mean, we pay attention to the types of customers that we have, because, rightfully so, 2001, 2008, when construction dropped, if that was a big chunk of your customer base, you were having a problem.
Right.
So that's definitely something of it kind of hit me whenever you were talking about that, looking at that information, those that just shut down, they just didn't have, sure, come after me. I'm not generating anything. We're toast here. A question for you from a vendor standpoint, that if your primary is supporting commercial real estate, what do they need to know? What do companies like us need to know or be mindful of as things are shifting? Or maybe the shift has already happened, but what are the things that you're seeing, or that you would say, hey, if I was in your position, this is what you need to know about commercial real estate that is different, or that is changing? So
I think there's definitely some things that have shifted that probably will not, that will stay in the track that it's in. Janitorial is different. Now, they've come out and COVID isn't as transmittable on surfaces. We were cleaning everything, right? Everything every 5 seconds. But what it did show is that you do need to do more individualized cleaning, right? And while it's maybe not COVID, there will be a next.
Sure.
And so what is that going to look like? And so I think janitorial has forever shifted in multi-tenant commercial office, probably in single-tenant commercial office as well, that you're going to just have more service requirements. I think that HVAC and filterization and all of that kind of stuff, you're also going to see shifts. You also have ones that were not impacted at all. You know, I mean, all your landscapers. Now, maybe you didn't change your flowers out as often, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had some buildings that really they didn't have tenants, and so the landlord was like, we don't need to put flowers in the fall. Let's wait and see. We'll put them in when they're coming back.
Yeah.
But we still cut the grass and we still blew off the parking lots because you got to still do those things.
Maintain.
Right. So, I think from a perspective of service providers, I think it goes to the other point. I think we're going to continue to operate these buildings mostly in the way that they've been operated. It's just, you may have less people at any given time, but you may have more people through your building. So access control, you'll probably have more users because you're going to have people, you'll end up with they'll hire people and have not 2 shifts, but different times. That
People may be coming in at different times of the day than they normally would.
And you also may have 2 people using the same space. So we already have some sharing, but you may have that more so where you have, if you have 20% of your work population that is working remote, except they come in 1 day a week, and maybe your other people. So you may not need to get additional office space because you may be able to accommodate
Just kind of split days or
you
whatever.
may be able to accommodate a 10% growth in your staff without a 10% growth in your footprint. But you're going to need more service in your footprint. So you're going to have more access cards. You're going to have more cleaning needed, more specialized. I think so. I think vendors. I don't want to say status quo because things shift. But I don't see significant downward shifts in services provided.
People aren't going to stop using HVAC. They're not going to stop cleaning. They're not going to stop doing their lawn maintenance. They're not going to stop dealing with security. Those are all staples.
Yeah, I mean,
so that you just brought up something very interesting. Do you think are you and this may just be a crazy thought, shifting to more of 24-hour operating buildings where they're kind of working 2 shifts, sharing the same space, but being able, maybe these people like to come in and work from 8 p.m. to whatever.
I think you're going to see a lot more flexibility.
Okay.
I think that companies are going to provide a lot more flexibility. So you have some industries that no, that's not going to happen. But I think you have some industries that we've got the space, like we're already paying for the space. So you may have to have 2 janitorial shifts, right? You may have to have one after the first crew comes down, and then you have one that comes in at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
That cleans again. Because people may want to look at that different shift, that I'm going to work in the office from 8 to 2
when nobody else is there.
And then I'm going to come in at 8 at night, right, till 2. So I think that this has shown that companies can be more flexible, so I think you will see companies being more flexible. Big thing, it was before the pandemic, and I hear the exact same things now. Is talent, is a huge issue, is trying to attract good people to come work for you. So, I mean, I think like I said, that was the biggest touch point on anything any sessions I attended, any panels I was on, anything.
If you can't figure that out, space is not even really.
It doesn't, right? But the thing is you've got to. So I think that companies are going to continue to be more flexible because they're going to have to be to bring in the talent. Because you may have somebody that says, that's great, but I want to work from home in the afternoons. And companies are they already know it can happen, right? They've seen.
Yeah.
We've had this wide awakening that things can happen. They're different.
Yeah.
But for the talent pool, I think you're going to see more flexibility in how individuals want to work. And so, I think that you'll see the ability to come in and to do that, and for the people that are coming in the morning on traditional time to feel comfortable, they're going to want it cleaned again.
Sure, yeah.
And so you're going to have. I know this.
Yeah.
I know where we're heading. Been there in different ways, but I think that I think you're gonna see more flexibility. So I think service providers are going to have to be more flexible, but I think that there's going to be more work, not less.
Well, it's also interesting. I mean, from an energy standpoint, I mean, energy change is going to change a little bit. HVAC, where you might be trolling it down a little bit or cooling, changing it in the off hours. Now
Right.
you're going to have to maintain it all
Right.
throughout 24 hours. All right, last question, and then I'll wrap up.
Okay.
Projects during this downtime. That is one of the things that I honestly have been shocked by, and I still am shocked by it, that when things started shutting down, we saw a spike in people going, hey, our buildings are vacant. Let's get all this stuff done.
It's a great time to do it without all those pesky tenants. Just kidding. Around. Yes. Yeah. No, I think definitely.
Yeah.
I think that, like I said, so we did build outs right in the middle of the day. Like the contractors didn't have to work. It didn't have to all be after hours work.
Yeah.
Those of us that were working in the office, it was a little noisy.
Sure.
But yes, I mean, I think that we saw a lot of that happening. A lot of project, if your budget's still allowed for it, and depending on your tenant makeup and your, how confident you are in everybody continuing on and paying rent and all those things, I think you saw it was a great time to get stuff done.
We had a couple of large facilities that they were kind of in this point where they said, hey, we've been needing to implement a new key system for a long period of time. And now we literally can do it and distribute keys on an easier process because people are not here.
Right.
So we had a couple of those happen very early on, and it made a lot of sense. It kind of was a shocking thing because I think the anticipation was, oh my, everybody's just going to hold their wallets
money
and not do anything, which was an interesting sign. Mary, I appreciate you coming in. This has
Absolutely.
been very eye opening for me, and I think brings some clarity in some of the conversations, and I think to me it's a level of excitement to understand. We have navigated this for a long period of time. It feels like.
Yes,
I've told people, it's like this is the longest, shortest year that I've ever known.
That's right. I'm with you.
It's like, what are we even doing? But it's exciting to continue to see construction. It's exciting to continue to be able to see things moving. What's going to happen differently? What's going to be the change and shift? I think is still kind of where we're navigating. But it's those that have seen this up and down over time it's encouraging to be able to go, okay, it's not horrible, and now we can just adapt, right?
Right.
Mary, thank you again for joining us today. A wealth of knowledge, and super fun to sit and chat with her. Once again, thank you very much for joining us and watching. If this is your first time, maybe you just stumbled across this because you found it interesting about commercial real estate, we would invite you to subscribe. We have a brand new episode every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. We've been doing it for a couple of years, and we've got over 100 episodes for you to check out with very similar topics, all about business ideas, practices, and strategies. So we would encourage you to go subscribe. You can do that by visiting Loc-Doc.net/podcast. All the links to the popular podcast networks are there, as well as all of the videos are online on Facebook and YouTube. All of the information is available at Loc-Doc.net/podcast. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.